because this series is about human value, and we can see the human value that Freud tried to interpret. And I can only imagine David. Remember that he had different convictions than the Nazis? Yeah, imagine him developing these theories or hypotheses. What must have gone through his mind? Because he imagines that in his going, he's going to have felt in an oppressed way. I mean, I would put myself in his shoes, because what kind of rules he set
For his own behavior.
of his own behavior to cope with that, because he was him. Unfortunately, he had to run away.
Change the name.
Change his name, exactly. And something that did give me grief about Freud was that he was considered for the Nobel Prize in a branch of science, but at that time they gave it to Einstein, because psychology was not considered an exact science, not a science of high reward.
What happens is that previously, no one talked to you about behaviors. They didn't talk to you about the importance of studying, and that is why until now, talking about how you feel is frowned upon, because you say, if you go to a professional, you are either crazy or not healthy.
Sure.
You do it, it's to not fall into this, to not generate conflicts, or because you don't feel good and you need to feel good about yourself. You have to analyze the battle you have inside.
Sure. For instance, I'm not sure if you've ever looked into Freud's perspective on hysteria, such as one of his experiments involving women and their responses.
However, hysteria was also broadly categorized as having sexual elements intertwined with it.
Indeed, he believes such cases stemmed from unresolved sexual traumas experienced by women.
This was how he approached the treatment.
Through hypnosis, see within her unconscious, trying to analyze what was bad that person had within her life to generate this hysteria. So it was like cataloging them all, like there were no rules in the part of sexuality, that they all unleashed because they had some. For instance, hysterical reactions were theorized as stemming from childhood trauma, such as an undirected response to sexual assault.
Sure. And he wanted to, as they say, see if this had physical consequences. Logically, we have to understand that at that time, there was no technology that there was today where it can be amplified and expanded.
Freud speculated about brain development through reactions to stimuli or thought, though at his time, such ideas were merely hypotheses developed in absence of empirical proof.
Let them understand.
Two other things.
First, he was a pioneer in this kind of trying to understand the human mind, no, not the mind, human behavior, because clearly we are talking here about behavior, because his study, his passion for the brain part, he realized that also people's behavior was generating all this kind of insanity, let's put it that way, or kind of mental illness. In other words, mental illnesses were seen to be due to disorders that people have had, and through hypnosis, he tried to dig into his subconscious to find out what had happened to him, because according to that trauma, he had been dragging all this kind of mental insanity.
That's right. So, for example, it was unknown, for example, where schizophrenia came from, for example. So he thought that, for example, that had to do with maybe untreated sexual abuse.
However, advancements in scientific understanding were limited and logical explanations were scarce.
Of course, because at the beginning, well, you are the pioneer, so you can make a lot of mistakes because you are creating the concepts and what you create according to what you have at that moment, or the evidence that you have at that moment. Or
being the first always leaves one vulnerable and exposed to critique. Your steps fall just as your flowers fall.
yes, and above all, if it's anything, if your theory is non-conservative, then you're always going to have the conservative part that you're going to say you're not bad. So you're always going to have that conflict or that battle between conservatives and non-conservatives.
So is she, for example. To a topic I want to talk about, since we are talking about decisions of the super ego of the ego. In itself, for example, today we have this debacle of ourselves.
Creating artificial intelligence is logically an evolution in human beings, and each person has their own ethics and values. No, and they think differently, but something I've been realizing lately is it that many people who have been senior officials or pioneers in artificial intelligence are coming to light today saying or talking that this can be or is very dangerous. So here it also comes where one must have a good service. No, because here comes the development of what should be done in this case. Let me explain myself a little better first, right? If, for example, David, you're a chemist and you develop something that can destroy the planet, but before you made the formulation, did you know there might be a possibility of that, don't you? So you developed it knowing that was a big possibility then. But suppose that in this development you have profited from a lot of money and many benefits, and you lived a life like thanks to her, but when you have already profited or already benefited and retired now, if you decide to take the step of saying no, yes, it is dangerous. So this is where the conviction of the leadership superego exists, right?
As you mentioned, they created that bypass system, and you created a rule to justify.
Remaining complacent.
As long as you're comfortable, you justify it. But there is this battle of, hey, it is wrong of conscience to tell you, hey, that is wrong. But you create justification because from the beginning you know that it is wrong.
Today, some openly discuss this on major platforms, avoiding discomfort during their career journey. That speaking today would have the same impact as if they had spoken when they might be uncomfortable in their careers. And so this is where, for example, I speak to our audience. We must have a very good conscience because sometimes unpopular decisions, although they are not accepted, are sometimes the most correct ones to make.
Yes, as I have always said, everything we do in this case or the decisions we make will also depend on how we feed those thoughts. In this case, in artificial intelligence, I have always said it is good when you put good information, when you generate good information. But when you have it, you generate bad information, bad or negative results. So it is the part, like consciousness is the fight, it is the superego. According to how we feed that superego, we are going to know that our ego is going to make the best decision. That is artificial intelligence. In this case, if we put it in this clear sign, then everything is bad. Nothing is wrong. It depends on how.
Not the double standard.
The double standard? Yes, but we are currently talking like that. But if when I created it, I knew that it was going to generate this double standard, it would be better not to have done it. My conscience would have said, I don't do it, or say, the implications can be these, you choose.
So it is then, unfortunately, when we are at a critical moment like this, we create rules to justify and not make ourselves responsible. And this is seen, we are talking about a psychological field where these people who are highly competent and are intelligent and have rationality to create something as special as artificial intelligence, but they also have the unconsciousness of not. Review your superego so as not to get carried away by the impulse to be comfortable or to live well and have an elite life. But everything has a price. So when we don't see beyond that is into the ego, we don't see beyond those perspectives because we're seeing al-alit. No, we're not seeing what makes us happy. But you are not seeing the collateral damage. And that is the unfortunate thing that happens many times with human beings. The thing is that you never or almost never see the collateral damage, or you can't see it.
Lack of foresight blinds us, as discussed. Rules and behaviors evade scrutiny, generating unchecked effects. He modifies it according to what I say is okay. So that's why it would be good to consider the fact that you have to work a lot, not just on the ego. The ego in the end is the one that makes the good and bad decision of consciousness, if not how to manage or what to do so that our end. It doesn't cause the problem for me because the fight comes from and which are primitive instincts, and if my negative instinct grows, I create a superego that in turn creates and modifies the rules of the game, and then according to the modification, I can have this negative instinct and negative primitive instinct increase
That's right.
and have a lot of value and a lot of weight, and I justify it.
That's right.
And here I come, and what does my ego do? Ah, yes, that's how I am, and that's how it has to be. Or everyone has to do what I say.
You get stubborn.
Exactly. Then your behavior is different. Then you no longer have discernment, you no longer do anything, but everything has to go. It is aimed at us to cultivate. This is the subconscious, no longer just talking about the superego, but about our unconscious, that our unconscious is not bad, that our unconscious is the healthiest thing in our thinking, because we create many internal conflict.
That's absolutely correct, and that's the essence of it. The beauty lies in the absence of conflict, giving us opportunities every day. Of learning how to organize these instincts, emotions, and thoughts so that they can become one, but one that really builds them. But for that, you need a lot of practice. And you need to be honest with one yourself, because from there the acceptance begins of what one is, because when one decides, one know before deciding what you're going to get into. I mean, it's not that we're unaware unless you're unaware, no, so it's different there. But many times you're analyzing the problem beyond the problem and what kind of problem the problem itself can generate.
You don't concentrate, it's just that I'm doing wrong, I don't have to generate the problem.
That's right. That is, I don't know exactly why having a healthy period is also, there is a saying that says, if there is nothing good to say, it is better not to say anything. But likewise, if there is nothing good to do, it is better to remove yourself, which is much healthier than being there in the eye of the hurricane.
Help us continue to embrace these human experiences and explore more about ourselves and others by just subscribing. If you like our content, definitely like, comment, share it. But also, if you want to be part of our podcast, all you have to do is leave a comment and tell us what you want to talk about. Remember, this is the platform for the people, and we're here to explore those life experiences that are very unique to you and to everyone else. Don't forget to subscribe.